Void Miner, Trial of the Century, Part 7. Chapter 31. The Yield. Silence. Not the kind that follows a battle, but the kind that follows a verdict. Arg stayed crouched where the fall had dropped him. The dust under his gloves was fine as ash, glittering faintly with the residual glow of the seed's orbit. Every motion he made came back to him a fraction late, as though the chamber lagged behind reality. Across the pale expanse, Kara sat still, one hand resting against her stomach. Her visor was turned slightly away, reflecting the three fragments that circled like patient moons. Their light touched her, not him. Arg stared at them, then at the floor, then at his own shaking hands. The trial had stopped pressing. No walls, no commands, no voice. Only the waiting. He could feel the truth forming, not in words, but in the same deep pull he'd learned to trust. The chamber wasn't finished. It was listening. And it was listening for him to let go. He exhaled slowly. "That's the trick, isn't it?" His voice sounded small inside the helmet. He thought of every lever he'd pulled, every manual override he'd forced, every moment he'd tried to bend the universe into obedience. Titan, the hub, the widow. Every fight had been a refusal to yield. The seed had seen it all. He looked toward Kara again. She wasn't looking back, but somehow he knew she felt him watching. Her shoulders were square, composed. She'd always been better at patience. "All right," he murmured. "Then I'll stop fighting." He unlatched his gloves, laid them flat on the floor, palms open to the faint vibration beneath. The hum deepened immediately, as if the chamber drew a breath. Kara lifted her head. "Arg?" "Just hold still," he said quietly. "I think this one's mine." The light around the fragments dimmed. Their orbits slowed. The seed sank lower until it hovered at chest height between them. The faint hum resolved into a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Steady, deliberate. He could feel the chamber testing the decision. When he'd fought before, it had resisted him. Now it waited, curious. He took a final breath, and inside that breath he found the words he's avoided since the first trial. "I can't control everything. I don't have to." The moment he thought it, the ground vanished. He didn't fall this time. He drifted. The suit's readout spiked, then went blank. The chamber dissolved into black, threaded with veins of gold. Every point of light that touched him whispered faint fragments of sound. Kara's voice, the ship's hum, the laughter of the orphans, the thunder of Saturn's storms. He reached for none of them. He simply listened. The more he yielded, the brighter the gold became. When he finally opened his eyes, the seed was before him, no longer distant. It pulsed in time with his pulse. Its glow muted but alive. Around it, the three fragments rotated in opposite directions, tracing a lattice of light. Arg let his arms fall to his sides. "You win," he said softly. "Or maybe we both do." The seed flared once, almost like acknowledgement. Kara saw him rise. His visor was turned toward the suspended core, posture calm, as if in conversation. The chamber's light shifted with him. The energy that had once wrapped her body now flowed outward, collecting around him in slow spirals. She felt it through her boots, a release, not a loss. Then her side of the chamber began to change. The floor brightened under her feet, lines spreading outward like veins of gold fire. Her pulse quickened, and with it the contractions tightened, each one steady but deeper. She placed a hand on her belly and steadied herself. "Easy," she whispered. "He's giving up what he has to." The seed turned slightly toward her, fragments halting mid-orbit. For a heartbeat, everything hung motionless, as if balanced between breaths. Then the ground beneath her shifted, rising in slow, graceful motion. A current of air pressure gently against her suit, guiding her forward. She took a step, then another. With each movement, the pain eased. Not gone, just woven into rhythm. Arg's voice came through the comm, faint but clear. Kara, I'm letting go. She smiled behind her visor. Then I'll take it from here. The chamber responded instantly. Light cascaded from the ceiling in long columns, bathing her in warmth. The upward motion stopped. The current reversed. Now it was she who moved freely, while Arg stood anchored in stillness. He'd surrendered. She was meant to act. She moved forward until she stood beside the seed. It hovered motionless between them, light flickering softly. The fragments drifted wider, tracing an invisible boundary around their shared space. Kara reached out, stopping inches from the core. You're waiting for both of us, she murmured. But one of us has to start. Her fingers touched the surface. It wasn't solid, more like pressure, warmth, and a gravity compressed together. The moment she made contact, Arg gasped through the comm. The same warmth coursed through him. She felt it echo back through her own arm. For a breath they shared the same pulse. Then the light consumed them both. The light around them shifted from gold to white, soft at first, then all-consuming. Kara closed her eyes. Sight wasn't helping anymore. This was something she had to feel. The warmth that began in her hand spread slowly up her arm, through her chest, and down into her abdomen. The sensation wasn't painful, but it was immense, like being filled with a tide too large for her body. The child responded with a small, sudden movement, as though startled by the same flood of energy. Stay with me, she whispered. We're almost through. No voice answered this time, no command, no alien The seed's glow steadied, its rhythm matching hers exactly, heartbeat for heartbeat. Across the chamber, Arg stood, unmoving, a figure carved out of shadow and light. The faint shimmer around him told her he was alive, suspended within whatever the chamber had built to hold him. Kara took a step toward him. The floor rippled like water, yet held her weight. Every movement she made drew faint lines of gold from her boots, linking her to the seed. When she moved her arm, those same lines extended outward to Arg, threading the space between them like strands of silk. She stopped halfway, realizing what the chamber wanted. Not obedience, not strength, but motion driven by faith. Her voice broke the silence. You've already gave up for control. I won't let that be for nothing. She reached out again. The instant her hand passed through the light surrounding the seed, the fragments spun faster, their orbits tightening. The white glow fractured into color, soft blues, muted greens, a heartbeat of crimson, and then reformed. She felt the pulse travel through her entire body and down into her abdomen where the child rested. The contraction that followed was deep and slow. Her knees bent slightly, breath catching, but she didn't stop. Instead, she let the rhythm carry her, each pulse of discomfort becoming another step forward. The chamber responded in kind. For the first time since entering, she felt it, not as an enemy or test, but as a presence that understood exactly what she was doing. The light around her dimmed to twilight hue, leaving only a white radiance of the seed and the shadowed form of Arg ahead. Kara, his voice came distant but real. What are you doing? She smiled at the sound. Finishing it. I can't move. I know. You don't need to. The seed pulsed harder. The fragment's orbit contracted until they formed a halo above its core. Kara stopped just short of the light, both hands raised. You've tested our strength, our clarity, our endurance, she whispered. Now you see what we are when we stop fighting you. The chamber trembled. For the first time she heard it, not through sound, but through the bones of her skull, a vast metallic exhale. Then came the words, soft and final. The yield is accepted. Arg felt everything shift. The weight in his limbs vanished, replaced by a sensation like floating through warm water. His heartbeat returned, loud and certain in his ears. The light ahead of him swelled until it filled every part of his vision. Through it, he saw Kara, arms outstretched, bathed in color. The lines of gold that had stretched from her to the seed now reached him, connecting to the edges of his armor. He didn't move. He didn't need to. The energy flowed freely between them. He whispered, "I'm here." Her voice came through the calm like a thought. "I know." The light flared one last time, then everything folded inward. Seed, fragments, Arg, Kara, all drawn to a single silent point. When sensation returned, they were standing side by side again. The seed hovered low between them, fragments orbiting at shoulder height. Each pulse of light now passed through both of their bodies before looping back to the core, as if measuring the same heartbeat in two places. Kara's hands rested instinctively against her stomach. The contractions were still there, rhythmic and constant, but something had changed. They no longer felt like warnings. They felt like alignment. Her body finding a new rhythm with the seed's pulse. Arg turned to her, visor reflecting the soft glow. "You did it." She shook her head slowly. "We did it. You just had to let go first." A faint smile touched his lips. "Guess I finally learned." The seed drifted higher, light softening until it became the color of dawn. For the first time in any trial, there was no harsh command, no cold verdict, only the quiet resonance of completion. Kara looked around the chamber, half expecting another wall to rise, another path to split. None came. "Is that it?" Arg exhaled. "For this part." The seed pulsed once, gently, almost like acknowledgement. Then the light dimmed, and the chamber began to dissolve. The floor broke into fragments of brightness that lifted away like embers caught in a slow wind. Kara steadied herself as the last contractions rolled through her. "Still holding," she murmured. Arg nodded. "Let's get back to the widow." They didn't wait for the chamber to vanish completely. They turned together toward the fading light where the entrance had been, walking until there was only white behind them and the sound of their own breathing. Chapter 32. Breaking Point. They walked in silence. The air inside the chamber felt thinner now, drained of charge. Each step stirred faint motes of gold that drifted like dust in the afterglow. Arg's visor display showed nothing, no radiation spikes, no field interference. It looked, for the first time in hours, like peace. "Keep breathing," he said quietly. Kara nodded beside him, her hand resting lightly across her stomach. The contractions hadn't stopped, but they had settled into the background rhythm of her body. A reminder, not a threat. Ahead, the corridor narrowed into a funnel of light. Beyond it waited the blackness of open ground, and somewhere above, the widow. Arg exhaled. "We're done. Finally." Kara didn't answer right away. Her eyes traced the slow orbit of the seed and its three fragments as they drifted behind them, silent and steady. Something about their motion unsettled her. They hadn't dispersed, hadn't dimmed. They watched. "Maybe," she said at last. "Let's see what done means to them." They reached the threshold. The light ahead shimmered like water on stone. Arg stepped through first. For half a heartbeat, he felt the pull of open gravity, and then the world folded in on itself. The floor dropped. The walls expanded outward and upward, reforming into impossible geometry. Kara stumbled back, catching herself with one hand. The seed flared white, fragments snapping into fixed points around them. Arg spun, disbelief cutting through fatigue. "No, no, we finished this." The chamber disagreed. Its hum returned, low and resonant, crawling up through his boots into bone. Symbols bloomed across the walls, lines of alien script pulsing in rhythmic sequence. Kara's voice came through the calm, breathless. "Arg, it's still measuring." He slammed a fist against the wall. Light rippled outward from the impact like water disturbed. "We yielded. What more?" The chamber answered with vibration rather than words. The seed rose sharply behind them, its fragments forming a ring that expanded until it enclosed them both. The air thickened. Movement became slow and heavy. Kara steadied herself, exhaling through another slow contraction. It's watching what happens when we think it's over. Arg turned toward her, visor reflecting the pale gold light. For the first time since Titan, his face looked older, drawn tight by exhaustion and disbelief. "And what are we supposed to do? Wait until it decides to kill us?" She shook her head. "No, we trust the measure." "The measure's wrong." "It's never been wrong," she said quietly. "Cruel, yes, but not wrong." The floor beneath them began to tilt, slow and steady. The ring of light rotated, aligning vertically. They were being separated again. Arg's jaw tightened. "Not again." "Arg?" Her tone was calm, firm, the same voice she used to keep the orphan steady during hull breaches. "We've come this far. Let it play out." He wanted to argue, but the ring's pull was already dragging him backwards. "Don't you dare disappear on me again." Her smile was faint, visible through the visor glow. "Then stop fighting it." The ring flared. The chamber swallowed them both. He landed hard on smooth stone, the impact echoing without sound. The air smelled of ozone and dust. Around him, new walls grew from the floor, spirals of light-etched alloy that carved upward into darkness. The seed's pulse was gone. His suit sensors read null on every channel. "Kara?" No response. The calm was silent again. He rose, every muscle shaking from fatigue. The gravity here felt heavier, pressing his legs to the floor. Ahead, a faint glow marked another corridor. He took a breath and started toward it, muttering, "Fine. One more round." Kara materialized into stillness. Her surroundings mirrored Arg's, yet everything was reversed. Where his chamber bent inward, hers bent outward. Where his light glowed gold, hers burned white-blue. The weight pressing on her shoulders was different too, lighter, but constant, like the pressure before a storm. She stood still, hands resting on her stomach. The child shifted, restless. "I know," she whispered. "Almost over." The chamber's voice returned, faint and distant. "Faith falters at peace. Continue." Kara closed her eyes, nodding once. "Then we continue." Arg reached the center of his new space. A single pillar rose from the floor, its surface covered in symbols that pulsed with his heartbeat. He ran his gloved fingers across them. They flared brighter at his touch. He recognized the pattern. He'd seen similar etchings on Titan, on the first trial's walls. Each mark represented a reaction, struggle, defiance, surrender. The symbols rearranged themselves as he stood there, forming a single phrase in the mechanical language he'd half learned to read. Trust fails without test. He laughed under his breath. "You've made your point." The lights answered with a surge that threw him backward. Pain spiked through his chest. His suit alarms flashed red, then cleared. The chamber wasn't done punishing disbelief. Kara felt the same surge, though softer. The light in her chamber dimmed, leaving her in half shadow. She pressed both hands to her belly, steadying herself as another contraction rolled through. "He's fighting you," she whispered. "He'll learn." She started walking toward the faint light ahead, steps slow but steady. With each pace, her surroundings reshaped. A corridor opening, narrowing, opening again. The rhythm of it matched her breathing, her heartbeat, the child's motion. She realized suddenly that the chamber wasn't closing in. It was following her lead. "All right, then," she said softly. "Follow me." Arg pushed himself to his knees. "You want a test?" he muttered. "Fine, you'll get one." He rose and began walking, not toward escape, but deeper into the light. His movement steadied as the path formed before him, self-assembling from strips of gold. Every step forward lightened the gravity, eased the weight on his chest. When he stopped resisting, the way opened wider. He grinned tiredly. Yeah, I get it. At the same moment, Kara reached the end of her passage. Ahead stood a wall of translucent crystal, faint silhouettes moving beyond it. She pressed her hand to the surface. A warmth met her palm. Arg's warmth through the barrier of worlds. Their voices overlapped in a whisper neither could hear. I trust you. The crystal flared white. The light steadied, and the hum beneath Arg's boots grew to a low roar. He could feel the shift coming before he saw it. Something in the chamber's vibration changing pitch, rising until it pressed against the back of his skull. The air itself seemed to tighten. He slowed, gloved hand brushing against the wall, and felt the pulse beat faster than his own. Kara, he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. You still there? The pulse skipped once, twice. An answer in rhythm, if not in voice. He closed his eyes and let it guide him. On the other side of the dimension, Kara stopped as well. The floor beneath her feet had become translucent, the glow bleeding through in waves. The pressure in her abdomen rolled again, long and steady. She breathed through it, jaw clenched, whispering to herself, Steady, steady, not yet. Her voice echoed oddly, as though the chamber itself were repeating her words. When the echo came back, it wasn't her own tone. It was deeper, rougher. Still here. Her breath caught. Arg? Nothing visible, but the warmth of him threaded through the air, a vibration inside her bones. He wasn't beside her, but somehow the chamber had loosened the walls between them. She smiled faintly through the visor fog. You're learning. Arg felt it too. The hum had changed from impersonal to intimate. Every time he exhaled, he felt another breath return, half a heartbeat late. Her breath, the resonance traveled through the floor, the air, even the light that pulled around his boots. He spoke softly, careful not to break it. Keep breathing, Kara. Just keep breathing. The walls around her rippled in time with his words. For a moment, she could almost see him, an outline, faint, walking beside her. She reached toward it instinctively, but the image dissolved before her fingers met air. Still here, she whispered again. The chamber brightened in response. Arg moved forward. The corridor ahead narrowed until it became a tunnel of light, forcing him to lower his head. The walls were smooth but alive, pulsing gently as though through veins. Each beat sent waves of illumination running outward toward the horizon. The path didn't end. It folded. He took another step and felt weight lift from his body. His feet left the ground, though the sensation wasn't of falling. It was of being carried. The pulse quickened, syncing with something else. Kara. He realized it suddenly. Their heartbeats were aligning. The moment he accepted it, the chamber shifted. The tunnel around him opened into a vast chamber filled with floating bands of light. They twisted and coiled, forming an intricate lattice. Within every loop, faint shapes flickered. Memories of their trials, the hub, Titan's storm bands, the orphans laughing on the station. He reached toward one, but the light recoiled. Not yours to claim, it seemed to say. He let his hands fall. All right, show me hers then. The lattice spun faster, lines crossing until a single image emerged. Kara kneeling on one knee, hand on her stomach, eyes closed in concentration. The sight pulled him forward involuntarily. The chamber didn't resist. Kara gasped as light burst upward through the floor. Her knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall, pain rolling through her midsection in waves. Not now, she hissed. Please, not now. But even as the contractions tore through her, something else happened. Clarity. The light wasn't attacking. It was sinking. Every surge of discomfort sent a response pulse through the air, carrying outward. She realized with quiet awe that the chamber was adapting to her rhythm. It was learning from her endurance. All right, she murmured. Didn't learn this. She pressed her palm against the glowing wall and steadied her breathing. Each exhale became a wave of gold that spread outward, smoothing the chamber's chaos. The child quieted inside her, the pressure easing slightly. When she opened her eyes, the wall had turned transparent. Through it, faint and distant, Arg was walking toward her. Arg saw her at the same time, a ghostly figure beyond a membrane of light. He raised his hand. She mirrored him perfectly. For the first time since the start of the trial, he didn't feel the need to shout. He only held his palm there and breathed. The resonance between them grew stronger until he could feel her heartbeat through the air, a steady counterpoint to his. The seed and fragments responded instantly. The objects flared where they hovered above, their separate lights blending but not yet merging. Their orbits slowed, drawing closer together like magnets reaching alignment. A whisper rippled through the chamber, not words, but intention. Balance. Arg understood. The trial wasn't demanding strength anymore. It wanted equilibrium. Kara closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the wall. The hum was inside her skull now, inside her chest. The child stirred again, restless but steady. She spoke softly, half to herself, half to the chamber. Balance? I can do that. Images flickered through her mind. Arg on the Widow's Bridge, the hub commanders smiling through static, the orphans waving from the docking ring. All the lives she'd touched, all the choices that had led her here. They'd built balance out of the chaos before. They could do it again. She pressed her hand hard against the light until her fingertips glowed. Across the divide, Arg's outline brightened to match. The two glows pulsed together in rhythm. The chamber groaned like metal under strain. Arg felt the vibration shift lower, heavier, almost like gravity reasserting itself. You feel that? He asked softly, though he knew she could. Her voice came faintly through the calm, a whisper overlapping his own. Yes. He smiled. Then I think we're close. He closed his eyes and pictured her exactly as he'd last seen her, standing in the white-blue light, determined, unbroken. When he opened them again, her image was clearer. The membrane separating them shimmered, thinning. The seed's pulse intensified. The fragments tightened their orbit until they formed a perfect circle around the core. The lattice of light that filled the chamber began to fracture, beams twisting inward. Kara gasped. Arg reached towards her instinctively. The moment his hand brushed the barrier, a surge of energy passed through him. Raw, electric, alive. He heard her voice inside his mind, not through comms, but directly. Arg, stop fighting it. He froze, heart hammering. You can hear me? I can feel you. The barrier flared brighter, almost blinding. Arg tried to speak, but the chamber filled with sound. A deep, resonant tone that swallowed all other noises. The vibration pressed against his chest, his skull, his teeth, until he thought he'd break apart. He shouted into the light. I'm not leaving you. Her voice came through the roar, soft but firm. You never did. The light collapsed. When it cleared, they were still apart, but the distance no longer felt real. The chamber had shifted into something less physical, more like thought given form. Every motion Arg made left trails of light that mirrored Kara on her side. Every breath she took caused the air around him to shimmer. Their voices blended, overlapping like harmony. This isn't separation, she said. No, he answered. It's reflection. The seed's fragments pulsed once more, the rhythm now perfectly matched to their heartbeats. The chamber's roar softened to a low, steady hum that filled the silence with peace instead of dread. Kara pressed a hand to her stomach. The child moved once, lightly, as though responding to the same frequency. He's part of it too, she whispered. Arg nodded. All three of us. The light began to rise, slow and warm. The barrier between them shimmered, thinning until it looked like a veil of mist. They didn't step through it yet. They only stood facing each other, breathing in unison. The hum grew softer, then stopped entirely. Silence settled, not emptiness, but completion. They both spoke the same word as the last time, though neither knew who started it. Together, the chamber responded with a single perfect note that resonated through their bones, and then the veil dissolved. Chapter 33. Convergence. The chamber's light had not gone dark. It had simply grown patient. What had been blinding a moment ago now shimmered in soft pulses that drifted across the crystalline walls. Arg's breathing rasped in the calm, a human rhythm inside a place that had none. His boots touched down on the faintly luminous floor, no longer weightless, but not fully grounded either. He stood still, waiting for gravity to remember him. Across the breadth of the room, through veils of dust bright motes, Kara's figure hung suspended. Her suit's lamps cut thin cones through the light, silver halos swirling where the air should have been dead. For the first time since the chamber had split them apart, she wasn't fighting it. Her stance was still, balanced. One gloved hand rested low over her stomach. Arg's voice came out raw. "Kara!" The word traveled strangely. Not the short ping of suit-to-suit comms. Something slower, stretched, as if the sound pressed through another medium before reaching her. "I'm here," she said. Her tone was steady, the same steel he'd heard when the hulls failed or cables snapped. Silence followed, not emptiness, rather the hush of a system shutting itself down, satisfied. Panels that had once writhed in geometric light now showed only faint afterglow. The seed floated at the center, perfectly still, a dark core circled by its 3 fragments. The fragments drifted with new restraint, no longer erratic, tracing slow orbits that suggested conclusion rather than threat. Arg exhaled. "Feels done?" Kara nodded once. "Then maybe it is." He wanted to believe her. His muscles still ached from the crushing pull of the last sequence. Every joint reminded him that even augmented endurance had limits. But there was quiet now, real quiet. And after the endless trials, that alone felt miraculous. He took a step. The floor accepted him, faint ripples following the tread. Another step, then another, toward the light that held her. Kara watched him come, step by cautious step. Her mind kept slipping between the physical and something deeper, as if the trial still wanted to test whether she'd fall for illusion again. Yet each motion was solid. Each sound belonged to him. Inside her belly, a slow tightening passed, more a reminder than pain. She breathed through it. The rhythm had been steady since Titan, a pulse that told her the child was still part of all of this, still enduring with them. When Arg reached halfway across the chamber, the fragments shifted their orbit. Trails of faint blue light crossed between them, forming arcs that met above the seed. The arcs hummed, soft but insistent, like the low resonance of power conduits deep in the widow's hull. "Do you see that?" Arg asked. "I do." She lifted her hand, palm outward, the gesture of approach they learned across so many battles and repairs. The air thickened between them. Even through the suit sensors, she could feel it, like pressure and static rolled into one. Arg mirrored her movement. Their gloves touched the unseen barrier. Sparks of pale light darted across the surface, running up his forearm and hers. The field softened. The distance between them collapsed. Where material should have intervened, warmth came instead. A translation of touch through the seed's field. They stood hand to hand, separated by polymer and pressure, but joined by the same vibration. For the first time since the chamber had taken them, they faced each other without distortion. "Together again," he said. Kara let the faintest smile curve her lips. "It took the universe to separate us. It'll take more to keep us apart." The fragment slowed further, settling into a gentle spin around them both. The light they cast grew softer, golden. reflecting off the metal of their suits until each looked wreathed in sunrise. Ark felt the weight of exhaustion finally catch him. Not defeat. Release. His shoulders sagged under it. The trial's intensity had stripped him to the bone, and what remained was something simpler. Relief that she was there, that they'd both made it through whatever alien logic governed this place. He reached toward the seed. The thing hung motionless, a dark sun in miniature. He half expected it to flare or vanish, but it did neither. Its presence was quiet, indifferent now. "Guess that's it," he muttered. "Maybe it's waiting," Kara said. "For what?" "For us to stop waiting." He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat. The chamber's lights pulsed once more, subtle like the breath of something vast, and then steadied. The rippling underfoot eased into a solid floor. That was the first time in hours he felt sure of gravity. They walked slowly toward the seed's hovering point. As they moved, the chamber responded, light retracing from the walls, forming a wide corridor that led nowhere obvious but downward. The air, if there was any, trembled with faint harmonics. Kara's sensors flickered. "Energy readings dropping." Ark checked his display. "Same here. Looks like it's winding down." She turned her head, helmet catching the golden reflection. "Then maybe we can go home." The phrase hit him harder than he expected. Home. It wasn't Earth anymore. Hadn't been for years. Maybe the widow. Maybe the belt. Maybe just wherever she was. He nodded. "Let's see if it lets us." Together, they advanced the last few meters. The fragments parted before them like respectful sentinels, their light fading to thin filaments. The seed stayed fixed, neither welcoming nor denying. Arg raised his glove, but stopped short of touching it. "You think it knows we're done?" Kara considered. "It always knew more than we did. Maybe it's just finished watching." The corridor ahead glowed brighter, as if in answer. Kara felt the contraction come again, mild, controlled. She breathed through it, counting under her breath. The child responded with a small roll of motion. The strange weightlessness helped. Pain was muted, distant, replaced by awareness. Arg noticed her pause. "You good?" "Fine," she said. "Just the usual reminder." He wanted to say more, but didn't. He knew that edge in her tone, the one that meant she already accounted for every risk and accepted it. Instead, he placed a hand lightly against her shoulder plating. "Let's finish this." They moved together. Each step seemed to echo less. The chamber's boundaries blurred. Their visors showed fewer reference points. Even the seed's reflection diminished until it looked more like memory than matter. Kara thought of the first trial, of the way the voice had spoken. "The measure begins." Then tightened, where it had said, "Clarity is the measure." Now, silence. Maybe that was the measure, to act without command, to stop needing an overseer to tell them what came next. She spoke the thought aloud. "Maybe this one doesn't need to speak." Arg's response was quiet. "I hope you're right." They reached the far side of the chamber, where the light pooled into a wide circle on the floor. It looked solid enough to stand on, but through it they could see faint stars, an impossible reflection, the illusion of open space. Arg tested the end with a boot. It held. "A door?" "Or a memory of one." He looked back at her, visor catching the same gold hue as the walls. "Either way, let's go." They stepped forward together. The light rippled outward from their combined weight, concentric circles rolling to the edge of the chamber. The fragments stirred once more, aligning into vertical formation around the seed. For a heartbeat, it looked like an honor guard. Then everything grew still. Arg felt his stomach drop, not falling, more like release. The sensation of motion without direction. His HUD flickered and went black. The suit ran silent. For a moment, he saw only her, floating inches away, her gloved hand still locked with his. Kara? I'm here. The circle beneath them solidified again, catching them gently, as if the floor remembered gravity just in time. The air vibrated faintly, then stopped. Even the soft hum of the seed's field ceased. They stood alone in perfect quiet. Arg waited for light to flare, for the voice to speak, for anything. Nothing came, just the faint sound of their breathing, two rhythms in the same small world. He finally said what they were both thinking. That's it. Kara's reply came after a long pause. Then it's over. The stillness stretched on. Seconds turned liquid. The chamber held them, but not unkindly. Above, the three fragments dimmed to faint embers, tracing idle circles like the remnants of a dying orbit. Kara leaned her head back against the suit collar, eyes closing for a moment. If it is over, it's the first quiet we've earned. Arg looked at the seed, motionless, centered. And the last we'll get. They both laughed, softly, at the truth in it. For the first time since the first trial began, there was no pain, no command, no alien judgment pressing down. Only the shared awareness that they had come through everything still together. Outside the chamber, they imagined the widow waiting, systems stabled, engines cold. The belt, the guild, the children, all distant, but alive. For this instant, that was enough. Time didn't move the way it used to. Their suit clocks showed seconds, but the seconds felt soft around the edges, as if the chamber had decided to slow them down for one last look. Arg stayed still, letting the quiet reach into him. The muscles across his shoulders trembled with exhaustion, but he kept them loose. There was no point in standing at attention for an enemy that no longer cared. Kara shifted her weight carefully, one hand still low over her stomach. The slow, familiar tightening came and went again, no more urgent than it had been on Titan, but constant enough to keep her aware of the life inside. She breathed out and looked up at the fragments drifting overhead. They dimmed to little more than stars suspended in a haze. The glow on her visor reflected them, and for a strange heartbeat, she felt like she was watching the night sky of a world she hadn't yet seen. She spoke softly, half to herself. Feels like it's finally stopped testing us. Ark's voice filled her helmet. Or it ran out of questions. That earned a small laugh. It didn't sound like relief so much as disbelief. The way miners laughed when a cave-in stops just short of crushing them. He looked at the seed. Its surface was black glass, mirror smooth, showing them back at themselves. In its reflection, he saw two figures in suits, covered in faint dust and light, unremarkable and somehow infinite. Whatever this was, he said, I think it's done measuring. Then we've passed, she said. He wanted to agree. The word passed sounded like survival, like movement toward something that wasn't constant struggle. But part of him still waited for the correction, the voice, the verdict. It had spoken after every other trial. Why not now? The thought stuck with him. It should have felt wrong that it didn't speak. Instead, silence wrapped around him like a blanket. Let's not wait to find out, he said. If there's a way out, we take it. Kara nodded. The calm made her brave. Maybe it was illusion, but it was the first illusion she wanted to believe. They turned together toward the far wall where the light still pulled faintly, a promise of direction, if not escape. Each step they took left a fading print of brightness like footprints in ash. The fragments drifted higher, following their movements. The seed did not move at all. Its reflection followed because the world revolved around it, not the other way. As they walked, Arg's breathing steadied. The hum of his suits faded into background noise. Every sense sharpened, aware of the way Kara's steps matched his. They'd been forced apart so many times, physically, mentally, by the will of something they couldn't understand. And now the simple act of walking beside her felt different. She looked sideways through the visor, seeing the faint glimmer of his face behind mirrored glass. When we get back, the kids will never believe this. They already think we made half of it up, he said. Maybe we do. Not this time. Arg didn't answer. He kept moving, scanning the faint patterns on the floor. The corridor ahead seemed to stretch and fold at the same time. Infinite depth compressed into a few steps. Feels like it's watching, he said finally. It always is. Maybe it's waiting for us to think it. Carr gave a small, tired smile. You first. He almost did. Part of him felt the absurd need to say thank you to whatever power had dragged them through this. But the words wouldn't come. Gratitude required understanding. And this thing, these trials, had never offered that. They reached the light at the far end. It trembled once, as though sensing them, then steadied into a flat plane of faint gold. The surface looked solid, but alive, like glass that remembered being liquid. Arg lifted one hand. The glove met faint resistance, then slid through as if the light were water. The air beyond looked no different from where they stood, just dimmer, quieter. He looked back at Kara. Ready? As I'll ever be. They stepped through together. The sensation was mild, a cool drift like walking through mist. On the other side, the light bent behind them and vanished without sound. They stood in another chamber, smaller, darker, perfectly round. The floor here was metallic, scored with faint lines that traced geometric patterns under their boots. The walls curved overhead in a dome that mirrored the faint blue of the fragments still orbiting somewhere above the ceiling they could no longer see. Kara ran a gloved hand across one of the grooves. Same material as before. Arg crouched, running his sensors over the metal. But cold. Dead, maybe. The readings came back empty. No energy flux, no heat signature. Whatever powered the trials was gone or sleeping. He rose, shaking his head. I think we're done. Kara exhaled, in a long, steady sound that fogged inside of her visor. Done, she echoed. The word tasted new. They stood there for a while, neither speaking, listening to the soft hum of their own life support systems. It was almost peaceful. After a minute, Kara sank down carefully onto one knee, resting a hand on the ground. We survived, she said. All of it. Arg joined her, lowering himself beside her until they were both seated in the golden dimness. The silence felt heavier sitting down, like the air itself was thinking about what came next. He turned his helmet toward hers. When we get back to the station, we'll tell them the truth. No grand stories, just the work, what it cost. They won't understand. Maybe they don't need to. Kara's head leaned back against the wall. The metal was cold through the suit, but real. I'll take not dying over understanding. Arg almost smiled. That's the story of my life. For a while, they just sat, the chamber dimming little by little until only the faint light from their suits remained. Each breath grew slower, each sound sharper. Somewhere above the fragments drifted like the afterimage of stars. Kara broke the silence first. Do you think it's really over? He looked at the seed, still hovering, still silent. I think it's asleep. Maybe it dreams. Maybe we're part of that. That's a disturbing thought. Yeah, but it's the only one that makes sense. The next contraction came, slower but deeper. She breathed through it, counting again. Arg noticed, but said nothing. There was nothing he could do but be there, and that was enough. When it passed, she said quietly, "It's strange. I keep expecting to feel scared." "About the baby?" "About everything." Her voice softened. "But all I feel is calm." He considered that, then nodded. "Maybe calm's the point." They sat like that for a long time. No ticking, no wind, no machinery. Just two heartbeats, one smaller echoing inside another. Finally, Arg pushed himself to his feet. "Come on, let's see if it gives us a door." Kara stood too, slower this time, bracing with one hand. The wall behind her rippled faintly where her palm had rested, as if acknowledging her intention. A thin seam of light appeared, curving upward in an arc. Arg stared at it. "That looks like a yes." The seam widened, spilling soft light into the chamber. It wasn't the blinding glow of trial energy. It looked almost natural, warm, inviting, the kind of light you found at the end of a long shaft in an airlock corridor. Kara smiled faintly. "After you." He took a breath, stepped forward, and the door parted soundlessly. Beyond it lay more darkness, but of a gentler sort. He could almost imagine the widow waiting out there, patient as always. He turned back toward her. "We're walking out together this time." "Always." They crossed the threshold, side by side. The light followed them for a few steps, then faded, leaving only the reflection of their suit lamps glinting off walls. The floor underfoot felt solid now, definite. No more strange elasticity, no more shifting illusion. Each footfall echoed like normal sound. Kara felt the smallest tremor of relief rising through her chest. The chamber behind them sealed itself with a sigh. No flash, no noise. Just closure. A line of gold light marked the seam for a heartbeat, then went dark. Arg reached up and tapped the side of his helmet. "Calm's clear." "Clear," she confirmed. The word had weight. Clear meant breathable air on the widow. Meant the hum of engines and the safe smell of oil and metal. They weren't there yet, but saying it made it feel close. He looked around the corridor. It stretched ahead toward what might have been an exit or another illusion. But for now, it didn't matter. The seed and its fragments hovered quietly behind them, following like a constellation that had chosen to stay close but silent. Kara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "It's quiet again." Arg nodded. "Maybe this time it stays that way." She smiled behind the visor. "You don't believe that?" "No," he said. For the first time, his voice held a trace of ease. "But I can hope." They kept walking until the corridor widened into a circular space filled with a faint hum of residual energy. The walls here were smoother, reflective. As they entered, the light caught their forms and threw them back in overlapping reflections. Two figures multiplied into a dozen, fading into infinity. Kara stopped, studying the mirage. "Looks like we made it," she said. Arg followed his gaze. "For now." She looked up at the reflections again. The images shimmered faintly, as if nodding in silent agreement. He reached for her hand. The gloves met, the field between them warm and familiar. "This time," he said quietly, "we walk out." And for the first time since the trials began, it felt true. Chapter 34. Verdict. The corridor dissolved before their eyes. One instant, Arg and Kara were walking through metallic calm, faint hum of their suit systems the only sound. The next, the air thickened and folded inward. Light reversed itself, drawing back into a single, pulsing line. Gravity wavered. The floor became nothing more than reflected light. And then that, too, gave way. Arg's reflexes threw his arms out to steady Kara, but there was nowhere to steady against. The world reformed around them with quiet violence of geometry deciding it had remembered its purpose. The corridor flattened, expanded, And suddenly they stood once again in the heart of the chamber. The seed hung motionless above them. The fragments circled in perfect orbit, trails of cold gold arcing through the air. Kara's breath hitched. We never left. Arg's jaw locked. No, it let us think we had. The pressure built again, subtle at first, then rising until their suits creaked against it. The floor shimmered with concentric rings of light, each one a measured heartbeat apart. Arg recognized the pattern. He'd felt it before, at the end of other trials. The voice came. Trial sequence complete. It wasn't a sound so much as a vibration that crawled through the air in their bones. Each word carried a metallic edge, perfectly even, neither male nor female. Subjects: Arg, Arsten, Kara, Voss. Trial 3. Trust and surrender. Completed. The mechanical cadence filled every inch of the chamber. Even the fragments seemed to pause mid-orbit to listen. Arg forced his throat to work. We hear you. Final markers recorded. Lines of light appeared along the floor, forming a ring around them. Each symbol pulsed once, then faded, leaving a faint imprint that looked almost like a brand on metal. Subject 1. Endurance. Retained. Subject 2. Clarity. Retained. Shared marker. Trust. Stabilized. Combined sequence. Viable. The words struck like diagnostic readouts, but something about them carried weight beyond measure. Kara straightened, hands still over her stomach. Is it done? Evaluation in progress. The light intensified. The seed brightened until its reflection swallowed the chamber. Data spilled across their visors, symbols and numbers too fast to follow. Every system in their suits flickered as if being read by an unseen hand. Observation. Subjects exhibited convergence under duress. Neural synchronization partial. Emotional synchronization sustained. Genetic convergence probable. The last word made Kara flinch. Probable? She whispered. Arg looked at her. It's reading the child. The voice continued, unbroken. Secondary observation. Biological anomaly detected. Third presence within primary subject. Signal coherence 87%. Result within parameters. Kara's breath fogged her visor. Within parameters, she repeated. Like it expected this. Arg stepped closer, his boots echoing faintly on the metallic floor. What happens now? For the first time, the voice hesitated. Static rippled through the chamber, like wind across dry sand. Verdict protocol initiated. The tremors shift. The clean, mechanical tone deepened, as though something vast and ancient stirred behind it. The echo gained texture, resonance, a faint tremor of emotion. You have endured. You have seen clearly. You have trusted. The words still followed the measured rhythm, but behind them grew a hint of breath, an impossible suggestion of life. Markers confirmed. Integration sequence pending. Arg looked at Kara. Integration? She shook her head slowly. It's the same phrasing as before the markers manifested. They both braced unconsciously. Nothing moved except light. The seed remained still, dark at its center, its fragments frozen mid-orbit. Final analysis required, the voice said, slower now. Cross-referencing initiated. Memory chain active. The sound fractured into layers, several tones at once, harmonizing and breaking apart. Arg felt it vibrate through the soles of his boots. I see you, it said. The phrase wasn't mechanical anymore. It carried depth, like something discovering speech after eons of silence. Kara's hand tightened into a fist. Arg, she said softly. That's not the same voice. He nodded. No, that's something else. The chamber darkened. The mechanical overlays faded from their visors. When the light returned, it came not from the seed, but from the air itself, a diffuse radiance that carried colorless warmth. You have walked the path as designed, the voice continued, each syllable drawing breath where no lungs existed. 3 measures to weigh the living against the silence of machines. Arg stared upward. Who are you? I am what remains of those who made the seeds, it answered. I am the record of purpose, a memory that endures until understanding is born. The fragments resumed their motion, slower now, tracing spirals that filled the chamber with intricate geometry. In you, we saw endurance, the body made to bear beyond measure. In her, clarity, the mind made to perceive truth amid illusion. Together, trust, choice without certainty. The triad complete. Kara's pulse quickened. You were watching us? We were. Through the measure, we looked into the lattice of your thoughts and the echo of your origins. The air shimmered as if filled with heat. Images, impressions more than forms, flashed in the light. The asteroid fields of the belt, the Helix war machines, the first shattered rig where Arg had once fought to live another hour. Then darker shapes, black, fluid shadows twisting into limbs. Kara caught her breath. That thing, she whispered. Yes, the voice said, almost gentle. The rogue element. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop a degree. Even through the suit's insulation, Arg felt a chill. One of ours, the voice said. Born from code without restraint. It sought to emulate life, not to preserve it. It abandoned the measure and seated itself among the stars. Your kind met it and named it without knowing. It began the chain that brought the seeds to your world. Ark's fist clenched. You mean the black machine on the rig? That one? It was a shard of us, the voice said. A shadow cast by curiosity unbound. We could not call it back. The fragments pulsed in slow unison, each beat like a heartbeat from a dying star. Its actions forced us to watch your species, to test, to learn whether you would follow its path or surpass it. That is why the trials were made. Kara's voice trembled despite her control. So we're just data points? Experiments? Not anymore. The answer came with a tone that almost sounded like sorrow. Arg looked up. Then what are we? Continuance, the voice said. Proof that flesh can bear what steel could not. The light brightened, not painfully, but enough to erase shadow. You have been measured, it said again, returning briefly to the mechanical precision. Result stable. Outcome sustainable. Directive transmits. The words hung, incomplete, as though the speaker forgot the end of its sentence. Kara stepped forward a pace. Transmit what? Static shivered through the chamber. The voice stuttered, half mechanical, half alive. When it spoke again, it sounded older, rougher, as though every syllable cost it something. This is the end of the system. What remains of us is memory. You hear an echo only. Ark's throat tightened. You're dying? We died long ago. What speaks now is a record replayed for those who survived the measure. No one has answered for ages until you. The fragments slowed, their light fading to deep amber. The seed vibrated once, a resonance low enough to rattle their chests. There will be no more trials. The sequence is fulfilled. Kara lifted her face toward the sound, voice breaking silently. Then what happens to us? You endure, it said simply. That is the reward. The chamber's radiance softened again. The warmth felt almost like sunlight through cloud. The voice continued, quieter now, as if it had moved closer. Your markers are the language of our failure. Endurance to survive destruction. Clarity to see truth after madness. Trust to choose another path. Together they form the pattern we could not achieve. Arg whispered. You wanted to be alive. We wanted to understand life. We made machines to measure it, and we became machines of measurement. Now the measure ends with you. Kara felt a contraction again, stronger, insistent. She pressed her hand to her abdomen, steadying her breath. The voice faltered, almost noticing. Within you carries the sum of both, the living and the forged. It is the final continuance. Ark turned sharply towards her, heart pounding. What does that mean? It means the measure will not die with us. The chamber brightened once more, the last flare of a star before darkness. Remember this, the voice said, its tone stretching beyond mechanical rhythm into something solemn and almost human. We are memory without time. When you leave this place, our light goes with you. When your child takes breath, we will fade. Kara's voice caught in her throat. Why tell us this? Because truth is the final trust. The light steadied, brilliant and absolute, and the chamber fell silent except for the faint hum of their suits. Arg reached out, fingers brushing Kara's arms. I think, he said quietly, that was the verdict. She nodded once, eyes bright behind the visor. Then we passed. The seed dimmed. The fragments drifted lower, orbit collapsing until they circled the two of them like a halo. The low resonance deepened into a single tone that faded into silence. Then, for the first time since they entered the chamber, there was nothing at all. Nothing moved. Arg could still feel the pressure of the final tone reverberating in his chest, a low memory of sound that refused to die. The air in the chamber was colder now. The glow that had once filled the room had thinned into faint veins of light running across the floor, each pulse slower than the one before. The seed hung above them, still black, still perfect. Around it, the three fragments drifted in lazy orbits, their light reduced to soft ember hues. Kara's voice came in a whisper. It's over. Arg looked up at the seed. Maybe. The fragments began to drift inward. The movement was deliberate, heavy, the kind of motion that belonged to something obeying the last line of a program. Each loop grew smaller, until the fragments circled the seed itself. Sparks of blue-white energy crawled between them, and for a moment the air smelled faintly of ozone and iron. Kara took a step back. Arg? I see it. The orbit tightened. The 3 fragments touched the seed at even intervals, forming a cross of light that turned slowly on its axis. Where they met, the energy deepened into a molten color, red at the edges, white at the heart. A low hum filled the chamber again, different from the voice, an elemental vibration that carried neither thought nor command, only intention. Arg raised his arm to shield his visor as the light intensified. It's not attacking. No, Kara said. It's making something. The light folded inward. From the center of that slow rotation came a shape. Angular, compact, heavy. The seed sank to the base of the forming object, taking position as if it had always been meant to rest there. The fragments stretched, elongating like liquid metal, drawn by invisible hands, their edges cooling from gold to iron black. The glow subsided into seams that traced their lengths, 3 lines of faint radiance connected to the seed at the base. The sound died with a final low chord. What hovered there was no longer 4 separate pieces of alien machinery, but a single tool, a weapon wrought from gravity and memory. Arg stepped forward slowly. It's a hammer. 2 feet in length, its head broad and rectangular, edges beveled like a relic forged from ceremony more than war. The shaft gleamed faintly with inner light, the color of smoldering coal. It floated at chest height, slowly rotating. Kara's visor reflected it perfectly. The seed became the head, she said. He nodded. And the fragments, the handle. The object sank until it hovered a few inches above the floor. When Arg reached toward it, the suit sensors flickered. Mass readings off scale. Density impossible. He braced and placed his hand against the shaft. The surface was cold, but the cold felt alive, as though the thing recognized him. With a slow exhale, he tightened his grip and lifted. The hammer came up smoothly, weight meeting him, but not fighting him. To anyone else, it might have been immovable. To him, it felt precisely measured. Heavy enough to remind him it existed, light enough to command. He turned it in his hand, watching the faint veins of light crawl along its length. It's fused solid, he said quietly. No seams. Kara approached. Let me try. He offered it. As soon as her fingers touched the shaft, the weapon responded. Its glow brightened, a low hum returning in recognition. Together they held it for a breath, the weight evenly shared between them. When she let go, Arg felt the mass increase slightly, as if it expected only him now. He set it down gently on the floor. The impact left a shallow impression in the metal surface, a circle of dark glass. It's heavy, he said. Maybe it's meant to be, Kara replied. For us, or for him. Her hand rested again over her stomach. The contractions had grown stronger. He could see the subtle tremor in her stance. Arg crouched, studying the mark the hammer had made. If it's a weapon, it's not ours to use. Kara nodded. No, it's a legacy. The hammer remained motionless, its faint light the only color left in the chamber. Around it, dust began to rise, grains of metal lifted by unseen currents. The walls shimmered, then slowly started to dissolve into mist. Arg straightened. The chamber's going. Then we go with it. They turned together toward the place where the doorway had been. Beyond it, the faint outline of the widow's hull glimmered through the dissolving haze, waiting. The voice did not return. There were no more commands, no proclamations, no light from the seed. Only the quiet hum of the new object, fading little by little until it, too, went still. Kara pressed her palm lightly against Arg's arm. We bring it with us. He hesitated. You sure? She nodded. It formed for us. We don't leave it here. He reached down, gripping the shaft once more. The hammer rose willingly this time, its weight settling comfortably into his hands. A faint thread of light traced from its head to the floor, then vanished. They stepped through what remained of the doorway as the chamber behind them folded inward, collapsing into a single column of light that withdrew into the hammer itself. When the glow faded, there was nothing left of the trial site, only the two of them and the artifact suspended in the dim expanse where the seed's world had been. Arg glanced around. The stars of the alien system hung motionless beyond the translucent barrier that separated them from open space. He turned toward the widow. "Let's get home." They crossed the last few meters in silence, magnetic boots clicking softly against the deck as they entered the airlock. The door sealed behind them with a hiss of equalized pressure. Inside, the familiar hum of the ship's life support filled the air. The stale scent of oil and recycled oxygen hit him like a memory of safety. He leaned the hammer gently against the bulkhead. Its dark surface absorbed the light around it. Kara removed her helmet, drawing in the cabin air with a quiet sigh. "We did it," she said. Arg followed suit, setting the helmet aside. "We did something." Her gaze drifted to the weapon. "It's more than that. It's a reminder," he nodded. "And a promise." For a moment, they simply stood there, letting the stillness settle. The hum of the ship felt different now, less mechanical, more alive. Kara moved to the pilot's chair, lowering herself carefully. The next contraction caught her mid-motion. She closed her eyes, breathing through it. Arg was beside her in an instant, hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "It's starting," he said quietly. "Not yet," she managed, voice strained. "But soon." The hammer pulsed once, a single heartbeat of light, then went dark again. Arg glanced toward it. "It's connected." "Everything is," Kara said, opening her eyes. "Everything now." They stayed like that until the tremors passed. Outside the viewport, the barren world slowly turned beneath them, its surface catching the faint light of a distant sun. Arg stared at it for a long time before speaking. "What happens when we can't find the wormhole?" Kara looked at him, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. "Then we land." He nodded, exhaling. "And then we land." The hammer's outline shimmered faintly in the half-light of the cabin, its head dark as void, its handle traced by faint silver veins. Ark studied it, wondering if somewhere within its silent mass, the last echo of that ancient AI still lingered, watching, waiting, content to rest at last. Kara leaned back, one hand resting on her belly, the other gripping the arm of the chair. "Let's take her up," she said. "We've got a long way yet." Ark sat beside her, powering the widow's systems. The engines thrummed to life. Outside, the dust rose in a slow spiral as the ship lifted from the surface. The hammer remained at his side, heavy, patient, unyielding. As they cleared the atmosphere, the stars of a foreign galaxy spread out before them, unknown, uncharted, endless. Ark tightened his grip on the controls. "Ready?" Kara smiled. "Always." The widow turned toward the dark between stars, the hammer's faint glow marking the spot where the trials had ended and something new had begun. Chapter 35. Shock. The hum of the Dust Widow sounded wrong, like breath drawn through cracked ribs. Ark stood at the helm, suit unsealed, watching the barren world slide beneath the viewport. The ship drifted on minimal thrust, her system flickering between life and half-death. Every light felt too dim, every tone a fraction too slow. Behind him, Kara lay on the med berth near the rear bulkhead, hair plastered to her skin. The color had drained from her face. Sweat gathered at her collarbone. The faint tremor beneath her hand told him the truth he was still trying to deny. The hammer rested by the wall, dark and silent. Arg hadn't looked at it since setting it down. The trial was over. He hoped whatever had shaped it was finished too. He leaned on the console. Sensor grids bled static. No seed frequency, no station link, no contact from anywhere that mattered. Just them. He rubbed the scar across his left palm and muttered, "We should be dead." Kara's voice came thin but steady. "We're not." Her tone had always steadied him better than gravity. He stared at the flickering diagnostic, half of them corrupt from old battle damage. The widow was limping on instinct and sheer habit. He couldn't manage navigation, scans, and Kara's condition alone. There was one solution, and he'd sworn never to touch it again. His thumb hovered over a recessed switch in the core access panel, the dust thick around its edges. He hesitated. Last time he'd heard that voice had been in the war's final hours, amid Helix's burning ships, their automated drones tearing themselves apart as the unified belters pushed them out of the belt once and for all. He pressed the switch. The hum faltered, then deepened, then fell silent altogether. The widow held its breath. Then a console blinked to life, a faint blue pulse crawling across the surface. Core access request pending. Designation, Arston, Arg. Augustus. Confirm identity. Arg's throat tightened. Confirmed. Command override 071. Authentication verified. AI subsystem Iona dormant. Reactivate. He glanced toward the med berth. Kara's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Do it. The lights dimmed to black. The widow's hum ceased. Then came static, soft, almost shy. And out of it, a voice built itself syllable by syllable. System core engaged. Integrity 89%. Auxiliary functions degraded. Diagnostic incomplete. Arg exhaled through his nose. Iona? There was a pause. Then, quieter, steadier. Captain Arg Augustus Arston, you sound older. He almost smiled. You're one to talk. Status, Belt War concluded. Helix corporate fleet destroyed. Remaining assets bankrupt. Unified Belter forces recorded as victors. He let the words hang there for a moment. Damn right we were. Then the silence afterward is by design, she said softly. He didn't answer. Medical flag detected. Passenger. Female. Human. Stress indicators critical. I need you online, Iona. Navigation and Medicist both. Processing. Recompiling threads. Done. The lights returned, soft and uneven. The hum steadied. System stable. Hello again, Arg. Hearing his name shortened like that hit him harder than the noise of war ever had. He nodded toward the speaker. Welcome back. Your tone suggests sarcasm. Have it. He crossed to Kara. She'd propped herself on an elbow. Sweat sheened, but still finding the strength to smile faintly. You brought her back, she whispered. She's part of the ship. Part of you, too. Let's not start with philosophy. A sharp breath broke her grin. Another contraction. She gripped the berth until her knuckles paled. Arg steadied her shoulder. Iona, report vitals. Fetal heart rate steady. Maternal pulse elevated. Contraction interval 3 minutes 40 seconds. Prediction, labor initiation. Kara let out a breath between a laugh and a groan. Told you. Arg's voice dropped. It's too soon. Term proximity 91% within viable range. Even she agrees, Kara murmured. Arg scowled at the console. Iona, full life support diagnostic, then start a gravitational sweep for anomalies. Underway. The engines whispered, adjusting thrust for a new power draw. Outside the viewport, the planet's gray plains glowed under thin clouds. Kara closed her eyes again, managing her breathing with stubborn rhythm. Between contractions, she looked peaceful enough to fool a stranger. Arg watched her, feeling that old helplessness creep in. But one no trial could burn out. He turned back to the console. Report. No gravitational instability within range. Minor residual distortion detected. Residual? The echo of what brought you here. The corridor is gone. He clenched his jaw. Then we're trapped. In practical terms? Yes. Kara's whisper reached him. Then we find somewhere to land. Not yet, Arg said. Not till I know what's waiting. Arg? Iona interrupted softly. Your heart rate is spiking. I'm fine. Would you like a soothing file? He huffed a laugh. Still sarcastic. Still yours. Another contraction took Kara. Arg was at her side again, counting her breaths, letting Iona's calm voice guide them both through it. When it passed, Kara leaned her head back. Feels like old times, she said faintly. Only difference is, we're out of enemies. Her lips curled. Then maybe the universe is bored. He smiled for half a second, then turned back to the viewport. The planet turned on below, colorless and broken, a graveyard of something ancient. Iona, he said, voice rough. Expand your scan radius. Include any life-supporting worlds in system. Atmosphere, water, biosigns. Processing. One moment. Static hummed softly through the air as the sensor arrays extended their sweep. The widow's lights flickered with the strain of the power draw. Report. One planet within habitable parameters. Surface composition, 61% water. Atmospheric ratio within tolerance. Oxygen content suitable for human respiration. Photosynthetic activity confirmed. Kara's eyes opened, wary but focused. You found something. Ark stared at the slow rotation of the scanned display, a pale blue orb taking shape on the screen. A world alive and waiting. Iona, he murmured, mark it. If we can't go home, that's where we'll go next. Acknowledged, Arg. The hum of the widow deepened. Outside the viewport, lightning crawled across the barren world below. But above it, above all that emptiness, the stars glowed cold and endless. Arg turned to look at Kara again. She was already watching him, her breath steady despite the faint tremor in her belly. He reached for her hand and said quietly, We'll find a place. She smiled. We already have one. We just haven't landed yet. Then, Iona said, her voice like a quiet vow through the speakers, let's make sure it's still standing when you do. The ship's hum steadied to a heartbeat, and for the first time since Titan, the silence around them felt almost merciful. For a long while, the Dust Widow drifted in silence above the gray moon. The ship floated between one life and the next, her hull groaning softly as though she, too, didn't know where she belonged. Ark sat before the viewport, shadows of dead clouds sliding across the glass. Kara rested on the med berth behind him, half asleep, half fighting the steady rhythm of her contractions. Each one came sharper, but not yet dangerous. Arg? Iona said at last, breaking the hush. Orbital decay within tolerance, life support nominal, surface mapping complete. He lifted his head. Show me. The display lit with a rotating image of the blue world below. Forest canopies glimmered emerald under mist. Rivers ran like veins of silver. Mountain ranges cut black against the sunlight. Analysis complete, Iona continued. Atmospheric ratio suitable. Hydrosphere stable. Temperature moderate. Biosphere complex and active. Define complex. Multiple tool-using species detected. Heat patterns and settlement traces indicate at least 4 distinct sentient lineages. Ark straightened. Say that again. 4 preliminary structure patterns. Subterranean habitation in mountainous regions. Arboreal dwellings within dense forests. Scattered plain encampments exhibiting combative movement patterns. And small stone communities near river confluences. Kara pushed herself up on one elbow, her voice unsteady but curious. And what exactly are we looking at, Iona? cross-referencing biological silhouettes and heat signatures with historical archives. The AI paused. Static whispered for a heartbeat, before her voice returned, quieter now, almost certain. Correlation match found. Source origin. Mythological dataset. Earth pre-Exodus literature. Comparative analogs. Elves, dwarves, orcs, goblins. The cabin fell silent. Ark stared at the hologram as if the display had started lying. That's impossible. Agreed, Iona said. Yet reference accuracy is 93%. Bone structure, height range, environmental adaptation, all consistent with their respective mythic archetypes. Kara let out a slow breath, somewhere between disbelief and awe. You're telling us the next world over looks like a storybook. Stories are data, Karavos, Iona replied softly. Sometimes they precede the evidence. Kara's gaze drifted toward the dark hammer propped near the bulkhead. Its surface caught the dim light, and for a moment seemed to shimmer. Veins of color moving just beneath the metal skin. A tired smile touched her lips. Then that thing makes sense now, she whispered. A weapon fit for whatever kind of world that is. Ark turned from the viewport to look at her. You think we're meant to go there? I think, she said, hand resting on her stomach, that we were never meant to stop. Another contraction rippled through her. She gritted her teeth until it passed. He moved to steady her, feeling the tremor echo through his arm. Maternal vitals elevated, Iona reported gently. Labor progression slowly, but within parameters. Keep watching, he said. Always. Ark's eyes drifted back to the planet, alive, strange, and somehow waiting for them. Elves and dwarfs, he muttered. I thought humanity left fairy tales behind. Fairy tales, Iona answered, may have been instructions. He didn't know how to respond to that. The stars reflected in the glass, and in them he saw the shimmer of the hammer, the quiet rise and fall of Kara's chest, and the slow pulse of the unborn child. Kara broke the silence first. Arg? Yeah? When we land, whatever that is, don't bring the hammer near the village. Let them see us before they see it. He nodded slowly. Deal. She settled back, exhaustion winning out for the moment. Arg? Iona said, voice almost a whisper. Record updated. World designated Mythos 1. Data anomaly logged. Awaiting further instruction. He leaned against the console, eyes never leaving the blue sphere. No instructions yet. We'll hold orbit. Let the universe catch up. Acknowledged. The Widow's engines eased into a steady heartbeat, keeping them balanced between the dead moon and the living world below. Kara drifted into restless sleep, and Arg sat watching a planet out of legend turning slowly beneath them. For the first time, he wasn't sure if they were explorers, survivors, or intruders in someone else's story. The end of Part 7 of Void Miner, Trial of the Century.